Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Jeff, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friends Richard.
Hello.
And Michael.
Howdy.
Richard and Michael are normally at odds as they debate and deliberate the Mount Rushmore of any given topic, but this week they join forces in welcoming, in a bit of a competition, our guest, who is named Moxie LaBouche. Welcome, Moxie. How are you?
I am great, and I am so excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, we're ecstatic to have you here, especially because we love your podcast. Moxie LaBouche is the host of Your Brain on Facts, a half-hour podcast of things you didn't know, things you thought you knew, and things you never knew, covering topics as diverse as sci-fi, funerals, food origins, heroic animals, and strategic butter reserve. Tell us a little bit about why you started doing this podcast, Moxie.
I have an excess of silly facts in my brain that just come out sometimes. It gets overly full. Like customers at the grocery store don't want to hear why the avocado they're buying has an enormous pit because it used to be redistributed by a prehistoric ground sloth. They just want me to ring up the damn avocado and let them leave. So I thought a podcast would be a great way to safely vent all of those bonus facts, except writing a 7-page script each week just puts more stuff in my brain.
Oh, it does. It refills the reservoir. But you have now another repository for all this information, and that is a book that goes on sale but is available for pre-order. It goes on sale June 16th. Your Brain on Facts book. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and where one may acquire it?
Well, the book is very similar to the podcast, except about 2/3 of the contents of the book are articles that have never and will never be on the podcast. So the only way to find out what I wrote about, get the backstory and all those interesting historical things you thought you knew, get the Your Brain on Facts book by pre-ordering at yourbrainonfacts.com/book, or reach out to your local bookseller from a safe distance. They need your love now more than ever.
That's exciting. I'm excited to pre-order it and to read it when it comes in. I'll grab a Kindle copy.
Yeah, and it is family friendly.
Is it? Okay.
And not
awesome.
So much when you get to the strange mating habits section, but you'll know it when you see it.
You'll know it. Big red flag. I see the Your Brain on Facts book. What's the language of the stateless nation in the Pyrenees Mountains, where the world-changing birth control pill was tested? Who wrote the lyrics for the Star Trek theme song that were never used? Richard and Michael, do you guys know the answer to that?
I know the second one is Gene Roddenberry, so he could get credit for the lyrics.
Exactly, yeah.
And
royalties.
Because he was a dirty, rotten money grubber.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Like
I'm not making a judgment on it. It's just a statement of fact.
Okay, well, let's just jump right into it because we've got such a brain trust here. Richard and Michael, their brains are full of facts. And although this time around it's a little bit about kind of not necessarily fact-driven, but kind of fun. And because we are debating the Mount Rushmore of fictitious prepackaged food spokespersons. And guys, who thought of this in our crew? I forget.
That would be you, Jeff.
That would be me. Okay, all right. Okay. Often I start conversations with my wife to initiate a conversation. They start with a question, and it's usually teeing off a story that I want to tell. And I think I asked my wife the other day, "Sweetie, have you ever met any packaged food spokesperson?" And she turned to me like, "Why? Have you? And do you want me to tell you a story?" And I regaled her with my encounter with Orville Redenbacher, who she didn't know was a real guy. And she was bored silly by the story because it really had no actual moments of interest within it whatsoever.
Yeah, when my mother was in radio in the 60s and 70s, she interviewed Harland Sanders.
Colonel Sanders. Wow.
And she reports him as being equal parts Southern gentleman and dirty old man.
Wow, that is from the celebrities that their worst recording. It sounded that of Harlan reading some plugs for KFC. I kind of got as much.
Yeah.
So well, okay. Well, why don't we jump right into it? And it is a tradition here that the visitors go first, and our guests, who we're very happy to have here, are going to go first. So if you don't mind jumping into the fray, Moxie LaBouche, what is your first choice for the Mount Rushmore of fictional prepackaged spokesperson?
Well, my first candidate would be Tony the Tiger. I feel like he's got a lot going for him. First off, at his inception, he beat out 3 other cartoon mascots that were being considered, those being Katie the kangaroo, Elmo the elephant, and Newt the gnu. And that iteration of Tony the Tiger still walked on all four legs and had kind of a football, almost Stewie Griffin-shaped head. So try to imagine what the other candidates look like.
Wow,
Tony
cool.
is the only kid cereal mascot who promotes fitness. You always see the kids playing sports in those commercials. So trying to fight back against the childhood obesity epidemic. And he was voiced for 50 years by Thurl Ravenscroft.
Oh, yeah.
That's the guy who sung "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch."
Mm-hmm.
That in and of itself should be a slam dunk.
That's great. That's a great choice. Thurl was also, if you're a Disney nut, like a few of us are, one of the Mellow Men and one of the singing busts in the Haunted Mansion, who is often mistaken for Walt Disney himself because he's a mustachioed person, or was for that filming. So what do you like, Tony the Tiger cereal? Is that something you enjoyed as a kid?
I have put away my share of Frosted Flakes over the years, yeah.
Yeah. I think, gentlemen, is it true that we did a Mount Rushmore of cereal mascots at one point?
Or just
cereals?
cereals?
Is cereal not...
No.
Absolutely. That's absolutely a great choice. And
I was
perfect choice.
I was afraid it was its own separate thing because, frankly, 3 of mine are breakfast cereal because I would eat breakfast cereal for dinner, and I'm 41 years old.
No, that's okay. I know we did cereals just in general.
That's absolutely perfect, coming out with a really great choice. Richard and Michael, what are your experiences with the not the Joe Exotic Tiger, but the Tony the Tiger choice?
No, I've just always been interested by the fact that Tony the Tiger, as you said, is the spokesperson who tends to try to promote physical fitness with kids, and yet he has the sugariest cereal you could possibly imagine.
No, it's up there.
There's some sort of disconnect here between what you're telling me and what you're actually selling me.
Did you know he's canonically Italian-American? That's got to be worth another point.
Is he Antonio? Antonio the Tiger?
Maybe, but he's canonically Italian-American.
When did he arrive on a gondola or something?
It was declared in the 1970s, and it was even celebrated by the Italian GQ.
Is that right?
Yeah.
We all knew Toucan Sam was mob connected, but no idea. Tony the Tiger.
They move a lot of coke. Follow his nose.
I think Tony the Tiger. I wonder if that cereal, that messaging and marketing evolved from some of the initial marketing around sugary cereals was that it gives you vim and vigor and pep in your step because of the amount of sugar is going to make your kids so wired that they'll chew the paint off the walls. So it seems like it might have been evolved throughout the years to deal with the childhood obesity pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, they took the word sugar out of the name because it was sugar frosted flakes of corn. Yeah. And in 1983, I saw is when they took the word sugar off, as if it's fooling anyone.
Right.
Well, speaking of, I think we're comfortable with speaking about this because he is not a fictional spokesperson, although his heritage is a little bit fictionalized. But Moxie was telling us pre-show that her mother was once acquainted with Harland Sanders, spokesperson for KFC, which they took the fried out of it when they stopped calling it Kentucky Fried Chicken. Could you tell us again what that encounter was like for your mother? My
mother had been in radio. She was an on-air personality. She wants me to stop saying DJ because everybody thinks of DJs as like Skrillex these days. Oh. In the 60s and 70s, and she did, of course, a lot of celebrity live remotes and things, and had occasion to interview Harland Sanders, who most of us know better as Colonel Sanders, the originator of the 11 herbs and spices. My mother reported that he was equal parts Southern gentleman and dirty old man.
Well, as long as those parts were equal. And I've learned that he is from Indiana, so he is not, although the chicken is fried from Kentucky. Yeah.
And he's a Kentucky colonel. And
yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that him and Orville Redenbacher had a rivalry? Both Indiana food stuff spokespersons?
They most likely did. Yeah.
Had to cross paths.
So, gentlemen, Moxie LaBouche has really come out swinging with her first choice of Antonio the Tiger. What is your first choice?
All right, so when I was thinking about this topic, I thought, what's a racist food spokesperson that I could talk about? And then what I realized is that we could almost do a whole topic just on the Mount Rushmore of racist food spokespersons.
Unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a checkered past that processed food has with race in this country. But I narrowed it down to one in particular, and my choice to kind of represent this whole sort of subgenre of food spokespersons is the Frito Bandito.
Ah, okay.
Who was the mascot for Fritos from 1967 to 1971. Mm-hmm. He was animated by Tex Avery and voiced by Mel Blanc.
Wow, some pedigree at least.
Yeah, they had quality behind it. And Mel Blanc was basically doing a variation of his Speedy Gonzales voice. Mm-hmm. Not quite as high pitched and not quite as fast, but certainly in that ballpark.
Was Speedy Gonzales also a variation from his Jack Benny character, Jose Jimenez, I think?
I think they're all sort of tied up in that sort of loose Hispanic sort of 50s, 60s world.
Yes.
And there was actually, I didn't realize, but there were several companies back in the 1960s who had Mexican revolutionary types, your Pancho Villa types, as advertising mascots, including American Motors as one of them. And this...
For the Matador?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And this lasted for a couple of years until, I know this will be shocking, that some people were offended by the Frito Bandito, a Mexican who steals things from you. Primarily several Mexican-American advocacy groups were founded in opposition to use of racial stereotypes in advertising, and they eventually modified the character to be more friendly, because he kind of looked like he lived the kind of stereotype Pancho Villa type. He had a gold tooth and a beard. They got rid of that. After Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated in 1968, they got rid of his pistols.
Wow.
So basically, he is, if you're being generous with it, he is an homage to Eli Wallach's character from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. At the worst, he's just a horrible racist stereotype. Mm-hmm. Right up there with Speedy Gonzales, which again also voiced by Mel Blanc. I'm not saying Mel Blanc was a racist himself. I'm just saying he winds up voicing these racist characters.
Hey, man, the check still cashes.
That's true.
Richard, I imagine one could choose this, all four of their Mount Rushmore choices, and Moxie saying this to you as well, using cartoon characters that are similar to actual Saturday morning cartoon animated characters, or ones that preceded feature films back in the day. Although I believe Tony the Tiger as a mascot, I wonder if he originated on a cereal box first, then jumps off into the commercials for said cereal afterwards. Was he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was originally the graphic on the box before there were much in the way of TV advertising. Mm-hmm. And bonus fact, Kellogg sued ExxonMobil when they started calling their convenience stores Tiger Marts because the logo looked a lot like Tony the Tiger.
Wow. Okay. Well, cool. Moxie, give us your second choice, please.
All righty. Coming up on number 2, close second, 1, Horatio Magellan Crunch.
The captain.
Oh, my God. I didn't know. Oh, is he still captain? I thought he was promoted to admiral. Okay.
Well, now I'll be happy to tell you all about that because, of course, I got all this nonsense. Yes, the character was born from a dubious survey that claimed that children under the age of 10 prefer crunchy food over soggy food. Who the hell wants soggy food? Who were the dissenting kids in the survey?
The children who lost teeth in a baseball outfielding accident or something, perhaps, yeah.
Maybe it was pre-fluoridation.
Yeah.
But Quaker Oats hired Jay Ward, who was a co-creator of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Mm-hmm. And he was voiced by finding in my notes, Dawes Butler, who also voiced Yogi Bear and Huckleberry Hound. So kind of a pretty lot going into this particular mascot. Now, there is some question about his rank. Yes, he has 3 gold stripes on his cuffs, which in the U.S. Navy would make him a commander, the next rank down from captain. The Navy actually had to weigh in on this. This was such a hot-button topic, saying that Captain Crunch appears to be wearing the rank of a U.S. Navy commander. U.S. Navy spokesman Lieutenant Commander Sarah Flaherty said, "Oddly, our personnel records do not show a Captain Crunch who currently serves or has served in the Navy." Now, that being said, for whatever reason, Captain Crunch showed up in a lot of U.S. Navy cruise books, and these are like a yearbook for the time that you were out at sea with that same group of people. No one knows why he was included in them, but like the 1975 cruise book from the USS Lang, the 1980 cruise book from the USS Nicholson, and on, for whatever reason, the Navy had Captain Crunch as a semi-unofficial mascot.
Wow, that's a lot of fun.
It's funny. I don't have like a memory. You know, you mentioned the same voice, the same guy that did his voice did Yogi Bear. I don't have like a distinctive Captain Crunch voice in my head, but he's just, the image of him is so permanent. And it's funny, I didn't even realize that he's American. I figured that he was...
I thought he was British from the Horatio, yeah.
Yeah, I figured that he was just like sailing under his own flag or has gone rogue on these, this pirate.
Wouldn't that make him a pirate? Yeah.
Under the flag of Quaker Oats.
Yeah.
No, I mainly just want to chime in here to, as we did in the cereal episode,
I'm sorry. I forgot.
That's okay. No, that's okay, because anytime I get the chance to refresh people about the majesty that is the song "Where's the Captain," I must do it.
Please refresh us.
Because this was in 1987 when Captain Crunch one day disappeared, and they turned this into a months-long saga that played out through various commercials on the boxes, and they all even had a music video done by one Mr. Rick Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo Derringer for a song called "Where's the Captain?" And it is as cheesy of an 80s song as you can possibly imagine, with lots of like 8-year-old kids miming to the song, dressed up like Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper. It's a trip, you guys. Please.
I'm having a stroke just listening to that.
Go on YouTube and watch it for yourself. It's some spectacular, weird kids marketing. I don't know who the brain trust was that came up with that, but it's out there, you guys.
Wow.
But I love the Captain. I love Captain Crunch. I love the cereal. I love him. Michael, I believe Captain Crunch had kind of a mix of an old and zany kind of voice. He kind of sounded like your kind of your typical sort of, I guess, eccentric uncle would be sort of how I would describe it.
It's an avuncular tone, certainly.
Yeah. I thought of him like as a Mr. Magoo on meth or something like that.
Yeah, a little bit of that.
Yeah. I am looking at a list of breakfast cereal advertising characters, and Quaker Oats seems to have cornered the market on superlatives because they have King Vitamin and Captain Crunch. I think the only thing that could challenge them is from the Weetabix food company, Professor Weedo. So giving this gravitas to these characters in order to browbeat kids into buying cereal is a pretty good strategy. I think
King Vitamin's a WIC cereal. You don't have that by choice. It's because it's either King Vitamin or Kaboom, the clown one, and I still cringe when I see it out of the corner of my eye. We could
also rank them by how dangerous they would be in a fight so far.
Yeah.
Do you want a bandito with pistols blazing? Do you want a literal tiger who will rip your neck out?
Oh, I thought you were talking about how dangerous the food product was, just going to get cut up all in the mouth with the Captain Crunch.
Well,
put it on your fists like Rambo.
Yeah.
Well, if you're like Michael and I, neither of us use milk in our cereal,
So
then
bizarre.
the Captain Crunch mouth scraping thing is very real.
What do you use?
Just eat it dry.
Nothing. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's just snacking.
That's just next.
Thank you.
I will say that, oddly, I believe the roof of mouth sandpaper effect that you get from Captain Crunch is only comparable to eating a Chips Ahoy cookie, the dry original Chips Ahoy cookie, which is, I think, odd because they're both kind of seafaring type of marketing. But. So, gentlemen, it is time to choose to let us know your second choice.
Well, if you were going to rank someone in terms of toughness, my next choice would definitely be last on the list, and that is Mr. Poppin Fresh, the Pillsbury Doughboy from the Pillsbury line of, I guess, breakfast delights that Pillsbury puts out, be it cinnamon rolls or Grams or crescent rolls or what have you. But Poppin Fresh really is what I like about him as a mascot is that he hasn't really changed in 70 years that he's been around. He was introduced in 1965, so I guess 60 something years. Introduced in 1965 as kind of this round, joyous, laughing, giggling white piece of living dough that is just with you on your breakfast table as you eat. And is so happy, and he's not really energetic. He's not really. He seems like he's a very supportive mascot to have around, especially during breakfast time. And I just really like that he has been basically unchanged. So many. Whether you talk about like Tony the Tiger has gone from being, like Moxie said, like this kind of football head-shaped regular tiger into being the strongman tiger, or now he's got cool lightning bolt stripes on him, and has been very much redefined, era after era. Poppin Fresh is just, he is who he is, and he's like almost as recognizable as some other, very popular cartoon characters, like obviously no one is as recognizable as Mickey Mouse, but you see his face and you know exactly what he represents and what his name is and what he does. I didn't realize that possibly though Poppin Fresh fucks, because he's got a whole Poppin Fresh family, including maybe, I don't know if it's his girlfriend, Poppy. It might be his wife. He's got kids named Popper and Bun Bun. Definitely, he has, their grandparents, Grandpopper and Grandmommer. So he comes from, a line of, dough that gets it on, which is very, very exciting for to discover that on such a lily white character, literally lily white character.
Poppin Fresh was voiced originally by Paul Frees, who was joined Thurl Ravenscroft, voice of Tony the Tiger, in some Disney attractions. So, sorry to get my Disney nerdery in there.
No. Wall of red string, it's all connected.
Yeah.
I do also enjoy that he seems like he was the direct inspiration for the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters.
You didn't take away Michelin Man from Stay Puft?
Oh, I guess so. I guess maybe Poppin Fresh and the Michelin Man got together.
Maybe they got it on.
Although I would say,
so when you mix rubber and yeast dough, you get marshmallows. Got it.
I would go marshmallow with you there because Dan Aykroyd's character speaks of him as this innocent, harmless, sweet kind of character, and I wouldn't. Michelin Man seems like he's out to kick some ass.
True.
Do you think? I believe Poppin Fresh may have at some point been nearly usurped by the Hamburger Helper oven mitt, because they almost seem to be the same kind of oven adjacent lurker that whenever you see them in the commercial, they're usually kind of being shot from a top down vantage point.
And they're frequently poked.
They totally are.
To get back to the...
Yeah.
So there's something about when the mascot is made of the thing that they're encouraging you to eat, because he's clearly made of dough.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's encouraging you to eat the bread products. It's just
Well, in some of
when
the
you stop
in
and
some
think
of,
about it.
in some of the early commercials too, he was called kind of Poppin Fresh because the tube of like dough that you would open up. In the animation of in some of the earlier commercials, he would literally pop out of the canister and then just be on your table, and then that just drives the cost of you just lose one of those rolls right away. It's just like, oh man, I was gonna eat you, and now you're here, you're having a conversation with me.
I would say Poppin' Fresh is a spokesperson whose name presaged the 80s hip-hop explosion pretty nicely, almost as much as Def Jam cigarettes did, or I can't imagine another product that... Okay, I think this brings us to our halftime, and at this point, I want to remind our audience that they have the opportunity right now to go to their bookseller of choice. You could always go to Amazon and pre-order Your Brain on Facts, the book. So what if you picked up some historical inaccuracies and flat-out myths in history class? Your Brain on Facts is here to teach and reteach readers relevant trivia. I don't know why I'm talking about it. I want Moxie LaBouche to tell us something that she enjoyed most writing in Your Brain on Facts. What was a chapter you loved?
Oh, of course, they're all my babies. I love them all. No, I was so brain dead by the time I was finished writing that. Are you kidding me? I got to write about something that I haven't incorporated in my show because I work clean on my show and I try not to get too deep into things that maybe people haven't had the talk about yet. But the reproductive habits and social hierarchy of the spotted hyena.
Oh.
And if you want to know why it's freaking fascinating, get the Your Brain on Facts book.
Well, that's fabulous. Let me ask you to regale us with the social media handles or any of the relevant URLs and things that people would need to find Your Brain on Facts. I imagine they could just Google it, Your Brain on Facts, but give them some whys and wherefores as to finding your creation.
Yep, you should be able to find Your Brain on Facts on the same program you're using to listen to this fine show. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Your Brain on Facts, and Twitter is Brain on Facts Pod.
All right, cool. So on the same social media platforms, you can find Mount Rushmore Podcast. You can get out there and give us some examples of your favorite fictional prepackaged food spokespersons. Let us know what we missed. You could also suggest a topic. Others who have done so have ended up participating in the podcast as a guest. In this world of Zoom, we are able to do this very easily, get you on as a voice in the podcast. You don't have to, but you could. We've got an episode coming up in which a listener to the podcast suggested the Mount Rushmore of athletes who would have been successful in their sport in any era. So we're going to tackle that in I think next week.
Tackle.
Tackle!
Rim shot.
Baseball reference.
That's baseball? I thought it was basketball. Okay. Mm-hmm. So at this point, I want to invite you to go out and download, rate, and review some past and present Your Brain on Facts episodes, and do the same for some Mount Rushmore podcast episodes. We'd love to hear what you think. We know you've got time to listen to podcasts. So we are now in our third round, and Moxie LaBouche, I'm looking at all my notes that I've taken here, and they show you many, many points ahead. So unless you falter in the next two choices, you're going to have a sizable lead. You're going to retain it. But let's see what you can do with your third choice.
I'm just here to have a good time.
Okay, all right.
And if I can win while I'm at it, hey, that's
yes.
Good. Well, I don't know if you remember the classic Chappelle Show sketch, The Racial Draft.
Yes.
Well, I am going to follow Asia's example where they drafted the whole Wu-Tang Clan. My third choice is Snap, Crackle, and Pop.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Those are, of course, the little elfin mascots for Rice Krispies, who were created in 1932, 4 years after the cereal was invented. There had been a fourth character who was only in 2 commercials in the 1950s, Pow, which was a reference to the power of whole grain, except he wasn't an elf and he was in a spacesuit on a hovercraft maybe or something. It didn't work, and he got shelved. But these three guys were even created to have their own individual personality. Snap, he's the one in the chef's hat, is the older brother who solves his little brother's problems. Crackle, the one with the striped stocking cap, is the middle child with a fun-loving personality. And Pop, wearing the marching band captain hat for some reason, is the clumsy jokester of the group. They've even been in movies. They were in a short called The Breakfast Pals, where they fought their enemies, Soggy, Mushy, and Tuffy. Yeah. But they've branched out beyond the world of television commercials and movie shorts and, of course, the breakfast table. They've infiltrated science.
Wow.
In physics, you have a measure of velocity. The rate in change in velocity is acceleration. The rate of change in acceleration is called jerk. The rate of change of jerk is called snap. That is official. Unofficially, the next derivative, the rate of change of snap, is crackle, and then the sixth derivation is pop. Again, not official terms, but they are used in some physicist circles. It's a bit like the thagomizer, which comes from a Far Side comic where a caveman is giving a presentation on dinosaurs. He's got a picture of a stegosaurus tail, points to the spikes, and we call this the thagomizer after the late Thag Simmons. And a lot of paleontologists do refer to spiky tails as thagomizers. So there may be somewhere out there a brilliant physicist mind referring to derivations in velocity as snap, crackle, and pop.
Wow, that's a lot of fun. I will say snap, crackle, and pop. Even as a child, I perceived them to be of my parents' generation or prior. I think I associate elves, or I believe, are they elves? What are they?
They're elven.
Gnomes.
They're elf-ish. They're
gnomes.
They're gnomes.
That's what they originally were elderly gnomes. That was their original design.
Is that right?
They got youthed up later on.
Oh, okay. They got elves are more youthful than gnomes. I guess gnomes do seem kind of bearded.
I did not find that in my. Cool.
Wow.
I'll look for that. I'll look specifically for that.
Yeah.
So if there is in the Tolkien verse, there is a dwarf who is associating with them, who they're continually competing with. Wow, Moxie, that blows my mind. I've never heard about Pow. He's kind of like Richie's older brother Chuck on Happy Days. He's got excised when he became.
Just took his basketball, went upstairs, and never came down again. Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of fun.
I also have what the characters are called in some other countries, if you wanted to hear those.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. In Sweden, they are Piff, Paff, Puff. In Germany, they are Nisper, Nasper, and Nusper, with a K. Mexico, Pim, Pum, Pam. In Finland, they are Pox, Rix, and Rax, which is the most Seussian, I think, assortment in the group. In Holland, Piff, Paff, Poff. In South Africa, Nap, Nater, and Knack. And in French Canada, Crick, Crack, and Crock.
Wow, that's a lot of fun.
I do like, their names obviously are derived from the sound of pouring milk on the cereal or the sound of the cereal in your mouth. And I love how the American version or the English language version is just so it just doesn't compare, honestly. like all the other ones are cute and you can kind of hear it, but just hearing like crackle, you don't actually hear crackle. You understand what crackle is, but you never hear it.
He's mad about the onomatopoeia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say Rice Krispies too might be of the cereals, and this is not a metric that has been part of the judging, but I feel like you see that cereal as much in a bowl as you do in a rectangular form on a half-price pastry shelf at a coffee shop or in a cafeteria or something like that.
That's true. What other cereal has such a second life?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
So I was just looking at this little research tool I have called Wikipedia, and I didn't realize that to bring everything full circle, the original voice of Snap was Dawes Butler. And the
Wow.
original voice of Pop was Don Mesnick, who we've all
Wow.
talked about. Crackle was originally Paul Winchell.
Is that
And
right?
some of the other voices, people who have done voices over the years include Frank Welker, Kel Mitchell from Keenan and Kel, and America's favorite nerd, Eddie Deason.
Oh, that's a lot of fun.
I'm
Yeah,
still trying to get over the Frank Welker revelation.
yeah, it's wild. Well,
Eddie-
Frank Welker has basically done a voice for everything at every point at every time. He's actually doing my voice right now. That's how.
Eddie Deason has also had a very prolific career as a writer for, I think, Mental Floss and other publications.
He is one of the world's biggest Beatles trivia guys.
Yeah.
So there you go.
And isn't Paul Winchell, didn't he invent the pacemaker or something? Like he actually has a number of patents and is renowned for his humanitarian efforts too. He worked with Dr. Heimlich. He worked with Dr. Jarvik. So yeah, he has a number of patents there in addition to being a voice actor.
Well, when you said he worked with them, he basically just moved their mouths while he said things, right?
That's right. He was their voice. Okay, dudes, I don't know. I don't know if you can recover because Moxie LaBouche is coming at you really strong with her great choices. So what's your third choice, gentlemen?
All right, so our third choice, and I'm going to blow some people's minds with this. If you've got kids, you may want them out of the room for a minute while I drop this hot topic on you. Betty Crocker's not real, you guys.
Whoa! Oh my gosh! What are we going to tell Junior?
I don't know. He's got all those Betty Crocker posters up on his wall.
December 26th is Betty Crocker. Okay.
No, so Betty Crocker is our third choice. And she was actually created in 1921 by the Washburn Crosby Company, which later conglomerated with other mills in the East Coast to become General Mills. And it was part of a contest in the Saturday Evening Post. And they ran this contest, and contestants were basically supposed to complete a puzzle, and they would get a pincushion. And they got a ton of responses to this, and along with just the general responses to the contest, they also started receiving these letters from housewives, basically with baking questions, household concerns, and they didn't know what to do with all these questions, but they thought there was something there. So the head of the advertising department decided, let's have some fun with this. We'll come up with a female, quote-unquote, chief of correspondence, and we'll came up with a name, the name of Betty Crocker. And that was how Betty Crocker started. By 1924, she was so popular that they started airing a cooking radio show called the Betty Crocker Cooking School of the Air that started off in Minneapolis and then went nationwide and was on the air for, I think, like around 30 years, wound up being on all three of the major networks at the time. And I just think it's fascinating to me that this I think it's really one of the first attempts to try to put a human face to a corporate conglomeration. And it worked to the point where in 1945, Fortune magazine actually declared her the second most popular woman in all of America, behind only Eleanor Roosevelt.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I find it interesting, too, that what she looks like has changed over the years. It's kind of unlike the Pillsbury Doughboy. It's kind of the opposite of this. She evolves every few years. There's always a new painting. It's always a painting, never a picture, of Betty Crocker. There is no one person that Betty Crocker is patterned after. The original painting of Betty Crocker was actually a portrait that was a composite painting that blended the facial features of the female staff in Washburn Crosby's home service department. But over the years, they've as tastes have changed and standards of female beauty have changed, they've adapted Betty Crocker to that. She looked very Jackie Kennedy back in the early 60s, for example. In 1975, they gave her olive skin to try to make her less obviously white and something that could appeal to a broader kind of subset of individuals. And I just think it's a very fascinating way that they've kind of, they certainly haven't hid that Betty Crocker's not a real person, but they certainly haven't been shouting it to the rooftops either, you guys.
They never gave you any reason to doubt.
Exactly. You would always suspect that, there must have been a real Betty Crocker at some point. And then over the years, it's just sort of, no, there was never a real Betty Crocker.
There was a real Duncan Hines, though. He was a real guy.
Mm-hmm. I'm fascinated with Duncan Hines because from what I've read in a thin tome of brands and marketing, Duncan Hines was originally a traveling salesperson who developed a book in which he published reviews of restaurants, and then ultimately that brand was sold to, I forget who ended up buying it, but it became a cake mix later on. Wow. Let me ask you guys, are these the original influencers? Because in the world of choice that consumers have today, as in years past, people feel comfortable being guided to making a purchase, not by a brand, but by an individual or by something that they can have a relationship with or an understanding of, such as a spokesperson, whether they be a cartoon or whether they be a artificial human person. Do you feel like that's something that's been valid throughout the generations, that people would rather buy something from a human being or feel like it becomes recommended from an actual individual?
Probably from someone that you know, that you have a relationship with. If you're constantly buying the same cereal with the same cartoon character on it, you want that same cartoon character. Same thing with Mrs. Butterworth. She was an anthropomorphic person that was in the shape of a bottle that's pouring syrup out of her head, but she's sitting on your table with you. And I don't know, that's interesting. Do you trust that more if there's the same face over and over?
And I think it's especially true with Betty Crocker, because not only was she just sort of as a figurehead, but they hired people to play Betty Crocker on TV shows and on radio shows and to dispense advice, so that Betty Crocker became a trusted person that you turned to when you needed help with your baking or with anything to do with your keeping your home.
I think that's true of, I believe you mentioned Aunt Jemima, and that I don't know which World's Fair it was, but an actress who portrayed her was hired to give demonstrations and be a spokesperson, so that if you were to ask the question, was Aunt Jemima real, you would say, well, originally maybe no, but then actresses at some point were hired to portray her. Well, I find that an interesting aspect of human psychology is that if I go out to Amazon and I'm looking for a fun book about facts, and I read a review by an individual whose opinions I trust, that Your Brain on Facts is a really fun book, you should read it. Well, I feel like I have a solid recommendation from a real person versus somebody who just has a financial interest in it. And I think that's very much one of the driving factors of this kind of new e-commerce world that we live in, where there's a lot of people. It's the new kind of Yelp, where we can read the recommendations and make a choice, make a more informed choice, not by doing what an advertiser or a corporation tells us to do, but by what
until we find out that all of the reviews came from the company itself.
Yeah. That's true. Okay, so please give us your fourth and final choice, Miss Moxie LaBouche.
You know him. You love him. He's got that laugh. So recognizable. Reminds you of Santa Claus. The Jolly Green Giant.
Oh, well.
I just like him. I just thought it was like, let's just make this gentle giant. He's going to stand on all the fields and not wear underwear under his loincloth, but hey, we're not here to kink shame, No, I don't have a lot. I just really like the Jolly Green Giant.
Well, that's awesome.
How can you tell if it's a real giant or not? Look at like a real Scotsman, I guess. Now, also a food spokesperson who clearly fucks.
Yeah.
He has
he's got Sprout.
got Sprout there, who I assume is his kid. I don't know that that's ever, if he's more like a ward of the court that's been awarded to the Green Giant, or if it's actually his kid. I would have to assume.
Maybe it just buds off of him.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this works.
He's a Groot.
Yeah, I would think there would be, if there are tribes of roaming green giants around the world, that would be chaos. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine if we got them upset about something? Yeah. They could destroy us. This may be the winner. I don't know if this is going to be one of your choices or not, Jeff. But this may be the winner of who is the most dangerous prepackaged food character that we have.
Yeah.
I have to put a disturbing thought into your head.
Yes.
Pollen. If he is like himself a plant.
How does he reproduce?
Well, no, I'm just thinking, how much pollen does an oak tree put out?
Yeah.
Ooh,
and you know what pollen is analogous to?
Yeah. Okay.
So basically just Jolly Green Giant all over the valley.
Just the money shot.
Of all of the spokespeople we've talked about today, he has the hardest task, which is selling vegetables to kids, or to parents at least, trying to get their kids to eat beans. And it's not that hard to get a kid to eat a sugary cereal or a tube of cinnamon rolls. But if you're trying to get them to eat corn and peas and other things that are generally just healthy for you, that's a hell of a task. And I think that he definitely puts such a friendly and helpful air to it.
But menacing.
Yeah, he's not an evil giant. He's there to bend the tree down and help help everybody with getting this food to people. He's definitely the friendliest of the spokespeople, with the hardest task.
Wait, are there any other vegetable-based spokes characters?
Oh, that's a good question. The birds. Is there a bird's eye bird? Maybe.
No, it's just a little swoopty on the logo, and Birdseye was the man's last name who developed the IQF process, individually quick frozen process.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird last name, but that was the last
you're
name.
blowing our minds. That's really awesome knowledge that you have there. Yeah.
The only fact I can add to this is the fact that the Kingsmen of Louie fame had a top 10 hit with a song called "The Jolly Green Giant" back in the mid '60s.
Really?
Yeah.
Was it related to that, or just a coincidence like Iron Man?
No, it was about the Jolly Green Giant's dating life, essentially.
So there's our source, gentlemen.
There we go. Yeah,
there's where all the information we need is.
Go back to the source, the guys who sang Louie. Yes.
Okay, Michael and Richard, it's your last shot. It's
okay.
Lay it on us.
Our last choice is there any mascot whose introduction is more of a direct result from ingesting that product? And by that I mean the Kool-Aid man busting through the wall yelling, "Oh yeah!" And he is Sugar Rush incarnate. Just he's there, he's in your face. He is every Chris Farley SNL sketch that has ever been done, but in the shape of a glass pitcher with a smiley face drawn on it. Another old, mostly unchanged mascot introduced in 1954. Although he kind of suffers, he kind of gets poochified, if you know the Simpsons reference. By the late 90s or the mid 90s, they kind of put him in sunglasses, and he started, surfing and being really cool. I mean, his first name is Cool, so I guess take that for what it is. But I don't know. It seems like he was trying to rival the 7-Up mascot at some point. Just the Cool Wars between him and Cool Spot were just they're really going at loggerheads. Just two ultra red cool mascots fighting each other out for who can be the coolest out there.
It was the Biggie Smalls and Tupac.
Yes, this is exactly right. But I like him as a mascot because he's so recognizable. Also generally friendly, even though he kind of destroys property. Everyone's happy to see him when he busts through like the baseball, outfield, or through the brick wall of your school or into your home.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars in property damage.
But it's all solved by just sugar water.
Michael, did you give us the year of his inception? What was it?
1954.
54. Oh wow.
Okay. I guess the story behind his creation. He was originally known as Pitcher Man. So
very creative.
A slight change in his name, but I guess the creator Edwin Perkins kind of came up with the idea for the face being drawn on as he saw one of his kids kind of drawing a smiley face in like just condensation on a window, and that kind of sparked his imagination and transferred over to the picture on a Kool-Aid, which feels that act is something very it's very childlike, and I think it's something that kids can kind of recognize when you see like this your fingers tracing that outline, and it's like, oh yeah, the kid has almost created this person out of nothing too. A little spark of imagination I thought is nice. But I guess we kind of have to touch on like the Jonestown Massacre for a second, or we don't.
It wasn't Kool-Aid. It wasn't Kool-Aid. It was Flava-Aid. And it was Flava-Aid and cleaning fluid and pesticide and anything else they could find.
Oh God. That's
Oh no, there's a documentary that has the footage, the audio footage that was smuggled out of Jonestown. Don't watch it at night.
Yeah. Flava-Aid though. So where are they? Who's the giant mascot that's
No man, that is the GoBots to the Transformers of children's sugar water.
And Michael, you mentioned the Kool-Aid or the 7-Up spot, and you do remember there was a video game, the 7-Up video game. Apparently, and I didn't know this, and I was just doing some research.
For the Sega Genesis.
Yeah, and I was just doing some research while you were talking, and because I had vaguely remembered this, there was a Kool-Aid Man video game for the Atari.
Apparently 2 of them. There was one for the Intellivision as well.
What are you, some sort of Rockefeller over there with your Intellivision? Mr. Rich over here? Richie Rich? No, yeah, I vaguely remember it, and I think it was sort of like a Donkey Kong type adventure. But I think it was terrible, if I remember correctly.
I mean, if it was on the Atari, it could only literally technically have been so good.
Yeah, your limits are pretty low on that.
I would like to exclaim that as we were a lower income family, Kool-Aid was the Rockefeller drink. It was Funny Face is what we drank. And that seems to be a actual kind of just somebody observed the visage of Pitcher Man, who was actually, I think, on a Craigslist ad, Pitcher Man. So be careful if you go after that. But I would also say as a kid, while we were drinking Funny Face and dreaming of Kool-Aid, I did kind of headcanon Kool-Aid as being in direct opposition and maybe competition with the Hawaiian Punch guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Who comes up with a character named just Punchy?
Just punches people. Just runs around punching people.
The most irrationally violent of all food spokespersons.
Yeah.
He's the violent drunk of food spokespeople.
Drunk, no less.
At least he's just, Kool-Aid's just doing willful destruction of property. Punchy is
Yes, but the Kool-Aid Man does raise a disturbing question. Is he the glass or is he the liquid?
Oh. Ooh, that's an Occam's razor kind of there. Schrodinger's cat would be in that picture.
And he also carries a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what's that about? Is that offspring?
Yeah, I don't know what that is. It's weird.
Well, we've established that all of these cereal mascots and cereal and other spokesman mascots are all there's just this massive orgy that's going on behind the scenes.
That's it.
is
Oh my God!
disgusting.
If there are furries, are there like product mascot enthusiasts?
We have had an amazing time discussing our Mount Rushmore of fictional prepackaged food spokespersons, and we want to thank very heartily our guest competitor, Moxie LaBouche. Moxie, tell us some upcoming episodes of your podcast, or ones that listeners can find currently.
Well, I mean, I've got 110 episodes up, so lots of stuff for people to enjoy there. Everything from the origin of the Vulcan salute to the history of nursing and the theft of Canada's strategic maple syrup reserve. Yes, there is a strategic maple syrup reserve, and somebody stole a bunch of it.
Oh, wow.
Was it Nicolas Cage?
Well, those folks, those topics and more you can find on Moxie's podcast, which is called
Your Brain on Facts, your weekly half hour of things you never knew, available on all podcast platforms.
And coming soon, the literary adventure, which is
Your Brain on Facts book, available for pre-order on Amazon or contact your local bookseller.
Guys, we should have been writing a book this whole time. What a bunch of knuckleheads we are.
It would have been not so much a book as just kind of random scrawlings with crayon and
Yeah.
No, you could definitely format this into a book.
So at this point, I have the role of choosing the winning prepackaged food spokespersons to be etched into the Mount Rushmore of this category. And it is a tradition that the visitors come in and to our home field and take advantage of our competitors here and cream them and beat up on them. And this episode has been no different. Moxie, I am choosing from many choices from your list. Just because I love him so much, I want to go with Tony the Tiger.
Yay!
Yay. And you informed us of his dubious military, or at least Navy, stripes, but Horatio Magellan Crunch. It was so fun to know his first name. I loved as he was portrayed by Russell Crowe in Master and Commander. I would also, since you informed us so much about the disappearance of Pal and the cold case related to that, Snap, Crackle, and Pop. But these guys, Michael and Richard, are not going to go without points because it just gave me so much energy and excitement when they just mentioned Kool-Aid. I'm getting so hyper. Guys, any parting comments or thoughts about the amazing trouncing you've had at the hands of Moxie?
I feel like we got cream of wheat is what we got.
We want to appreciate you for sharing a little bit of your time with us, Moxie LaBouche, and thank you so much for letting all our viewers and listeners know about where they can acquire your book and where they can listen to your podcast. This has been the Mount Rushmore podcast. I, as always, am Jeff.
I'm Richard.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Moxie, but I'm not usually here.